Uh, yeah, let me do this first. This meeting is being recorded. Welcome to Messy Conversations. This is going to be the final Messy Conversation of the fall quarter. My name is David Tripp, and I will be, what am I doing? emceeing today. Um, and a couple of announcements beyond that this is the last Messy Conversation for fall, which I think has been a really good series of Messy Conversations this fall. We feel very positive about it, and we're excited to end with this one on Trans Remembrance Day with two former undergraduate students and Kyle Sawyer, who I think everybody knows, who also graduated from the MAOM program, and Chris Salamanca, who's graduated from the undergraduate program and is currently finishing up in the MAP program at AULA. So it's always wonderful to welcome alumni into Messy Conversation space. So we have that. As usual, keep yourself muted until called on. But we want you to participate in the conversation. That's what makes this work. So please put your questions or comments, whatever's on your mind, in the chat. And in about a half an hour or so, we'll start calling on you to participate in the conversation. As I said, this is the last Messy for fall. We've been hard at work on winter. And I just want to mention a couple of the topics that we're working on without mentioning any particular names associated with them. But we're working on a session on DEI issues, real or myth. We're working on a session for BIPOC student retention. We're working on a session for writing, race, and anti-racism. We're looking at celebrating a number of faculty, AULA faculty, who contributed to an important new book on Black couples therapy. We're looking at a session on mentoring Black youth. We're looking at a session with a former AULA student, a Peabody Award-winning journalist who specializes on issues of race and gender. And we may also be able to squeeze in a conversation about Black joy and Black music, keeping in mind that February is Black History Month. And so a lot of things that we're trying to get lined up and in place for that quarter. Let me briefly introduce Kyle and Cristina beyond what I did. Cristina, as I said, is currently an AULA alum and from the UGS program, and finishing up their MAP degree. And Kyle Sawyer, also an alum, started a nonprofit organization, Building Allies, and focuses on anti-oppression as an anti-oppression facilitator and educator, with a special interest in helping people figure out, how do you turn your privilege into change? So we're really glad to have both of them with us on Trans Remembrance Day. And I wanted to start out with a question and then get out of the way and listen to Chris and Kyle in conversation. And we were talking about this a little bit right before we started, which is that it seems to me that often, not always by any stretch, but often cis people in particular, when they think about trans people or transness in general, or anything related to that, that they often come to it with a frame. And the frame is usually one of two things. They're either, oh, well, I'm a liberal, open-minded person, and of course I'm tolerant and accepting of transness, of course. Ask them anything about transness, and they just draw, I don't know. Or they're on the other end of that, and they're well, I'm a conservative person, and I see all of this as unnatural and problematic for political reasons. Well, do you know anything about transness? Well, just that I'm against it. And so I wanted to open with that question. Does that fit your own experience? And what do you think of that?
I think that question was for us, Kyle.
Yes, it is.
Right, okay. Why don't you give us a start, Chris?
So generous. Buenas tardes todos. Todes. Yeah, I think it does fit for the most part. My experience being alive. um there's also the I don't what is it like kind of being I think more like in LGBTQ spaces you get people that are a little bit more in the in between, but they very quickly go into like questions that I don't know they would ask just any other person in the community. Um, so that's interesting too, because you feel like, oh, I'm safe, and then very quickly you're like, oh, this is weird. Like,
Yeah,
what about
basically.
you, Kyle?
Well, I mean, yes to what you were saying. I have had that experience as well. And then also it makes me think of that um, my survival as a trans person has absolutely required my willingness to, educate, have space, and empower the folks that are on the side of, yay, trans people, I love you. Don't know anything about you, but I love you. Um, and to learn how to deflect the extreme other on that. Um, it's an exhausting existence at times. Um, and I think because of how I move through the world, how I present, I've now started to find myself in conversations or around people who might not say certain things if they knew I was trans. And so now I come out as quickly as possible because I just don't want to deal with it in my everyday um, life. It's you and I were talking about this, the privilege of being able to move through the world as we do now,
Mhm.
whereas prior to looking like this, it was a daily, um, didn't really matter where I was, a daily occurrence of people having thoughts and comments and questions about my confusing presentation. And now I get to not be confusing unless I want to, which is it's a much more fun subjectivity to inhabit, to know that when I go out into the world, like if I shave my face off and I don't speak, I get a lot more ma'ams and she's, and then I speak, and then people don't know what to make of things. And I really enjoy that too. And with masking now, I don't take testosterone anymore, so I have hips or whatever. And I've noticed that because I still mask when I go out into stores and people will, offer to help or whatever. And I often get a lot of ma'ams or she's, and I can't, took me a minute to understand what was happening. And so then when I speak, there's this moment of like, I don't know what to do right now. And I enjoy it. Before that would mess me up, right? It would entirely just knock me all the way down, that experience. And now, because I have power in it, because I get to choose um, these moments, whereas before I didn't really have much choice about it. Yeah.
I think that's a really huge point for people that get to navigate, trans people that get to navigate the world a little bit more invisibly, getting to have that choice, getting to find some joy in the shock factor of people, or shaking up people experiences, or
Yeah.
introducing them to like, oh, you just treated me really differently because you thought I was a ma'am. Like, it's really interesting. For a while after I was able to navigate the world really invisibly, right post testosterone, I also don't take testosterone anymore. But in the beginning, like when everybody's like, oh yeah, that's a dude, um, there was a real moment of like, I don't know how to describe it. It was weird to walk around in the world and feel like you would be treating me really differently if you knew that I was trans. You wouldn't be trusting me. You wouldn't want me around your kid. Um, and also feeling like having a lot of close trans women friends and feeling the hate that they got from people automatically, and feeling nervous when meeting new people and thinking about how they would take my trans women friends, and feeling really sad about that and not knowing what to do about that. And I think part of that was the reason why I started using Cristina. I made a point to use my name, Cristina, in educational spaces. So at school, everybody knows me as Cristina. I just forgot to switch my name here. Feel free to call me Chris. But it's just a little bit of I want to be a little bit out there because of how hard it feels to have this privilege now, knowing that a lot of my people don't have that and experience a lot of hate from that. So I've been lucky enough to have a really amazing support in the home, and I think that's what allows me to have that strength, because it really isn't strength compared to what some of my trans women friends have to lug around with a lot. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question about that? Because I remember when you came into Antioch and we were in educational foundations together, and we had a fairly good sized class, and you sat, just off to my left, uh, and we're going around introducing ourselves, and you say, oh, hi, I'm Cristina. And I remember thinking, damn, like, I think the word that came to me was, that's a that's a brave human being. Like, in that space where you're just starting your undergraduate with Antioch, you don't know any of these people, and then and you make that choice. And I wonder if you can say anything about more about why and what you hope to be conveying to this brand spanking new group of people that you're going to be studying with.
Sure. I mean, a huge part of that is what I shared, and a huge part of that was going to trans spaces. I remember going to trans spaces before and seeing guys that I was like, oh, that's probably a cis dude, and feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, after testosterone, after surgery, I would go into those spaces and I felt some of my trans friends and trans people that I didn't know look at me with an eye that I recognized. I was like, I think you feel nervous around me. And it like broke my heart, to know the level of anxiety that I brought in the room for some, trans people, because I was in their space, but they weren't they didn't know who I was, right? So they don't know what I come with. So I think that also helped me, you know, like put my name out there, in order to kind of be like, hey, like, you know, it's kind of like I'm Colombian and a lot of Colombians wear their flags and some other thing. It's kind of like that, a little symbol to my community, to not be as invisible, to remind myself of the privilege that I have, um, of the luck that I had to have family and to be in a country where I can do this. And and I also love that name because my mom was really happy about it. And it has started to dawn on me, like, why am I like, yeah, freaking cool to get to choose a new name. Why not? Like, that's fun. Like, just thinking of all these like Aiden, Cadence, whatever thing. But I was like, you know,
We all had that stage, no?
yeah. You know, like, I don't know, Wolfenton. That's not really one, but it's fun
Never
to think
taught
like,
me
oh,
that.
I can really step into this. I can like have fun with this, like how cool it is that I can do this. But at the same time, wanting to bring my culture, wanting to bring my parents along with me. And like, you know, a bunch of people already call me Chris since I was young. So I had an easy name to work with, but I love the name Cristina, and what it brings into the space when I'm introduced that way.
Mm.
It brings a lot more complexity to just me, and hopefully it'll bring people into curiosity, as opposed to hatred, or, you know, as opposed to just being like, you know, like just some random cis dude that is short and nobody cares about. I don't know.
It's really funny, mate. I was just thinking as I'm listening to you, Chris, of the subtle ways in which we can do activism and subtle ways in which we can challenge the systems and the institutions. Um, this is partly why I started painting my nails again and started wearing earrings and jewelry and, you know, being a bit more expressive in my queerness. Um, Long way from the beginning of my transition days when I was what I call now dude bro Kyle. You know, like, what's up, dude?
The bro.
Total bro. Right. And it was great and it was fun. Until, and it's interesting, the story you were telling about stepping into queer spaces and now receiving those eyes that you used to maybe give to others. I had a similar experience. But so for like 2 years after beginning testosterone, everything's changing, and I'm going by Kyle. It's like the world suddenly opened up, and it was like I was prior to this, I didn't have a job, couldn't find a job for like a year. I was broke. I couldn't like there was just nobody wanted to mess with me. And then post Kyle, I had like 3 job offers, got into a school program. People wanted to help me. It was like suddenly my success in this world was really important. And I thought, wow, this is amazing when you're living your authentic life. Look at what happened, you know? It's really great. Awesome. For like 2 years, super addicting, right? I was smart all of a sudden. I knew about things I didn't know I knew about, you know?
Yeah,
It was amazing.
I know about cars now.
Yo, what the hell? I didn't know I knew so much about cars. Amazing. The key turns. Um, and then one night is when I used to live in like East Hollywood area. Parked, you know, no parking. So I had to walk some blocks to get back to my flat and whatever. And as I'm walking, there's a person walking for me who I perceive as a woman. I'm like, okay, cool, it's safe, it's fine, right? Because at this point in time, I'm still super aware, hyper aware of what's going on around me at nighttime. Like, where are my keys? What do I need to, you know, pay attention? Don't have your music too loud. All the things that many of us are taught who are raised as women, right? So when I perceive a woman walking towards me at night, I'm like, okay, we're chilling, like we're good. And as we get closer, I'm like preparing to like give a little smile, a little acknowledgement, right? As you do. And then as she gets closer, she pulls out her phone, which I thought, okay, whatever. But then does this thing, which I've done enough times to recognize it, gets involved in her phone. And then we're on this little tiny sidewalk, and there's the roads next to me, and then the grass of whatever is next to where she would be. And she does this big loop around, like puts a lot of distance between us. And I could feel the energy coming off of her in this moment. And it was this really sudden realization of what I now represented in the world. That when I was moving around in the world, this is how I was perceived for a lot of folks, which was both devastating and enlightening in the same. And I started to understand that all of this that was coming towards me was, well, I look like a dude and I pass as a cis guy, so yay patriarchy. And then I also realized that the strangest thing happened is that prior to becoming Kyle, people would read me as Latina, which nothing wrong with that. I'm not Latina, but this is what I would get a lot. After becoming Kyle, I am placed much more in towards whiteness. And so now I've got this whiteness and I've got this maleness going on. And suddenly I can have whatever I want in this world. It doesn't matter who gets hurt in this process. And this moment of realization of the amount of power that comes from that, and whether I wanted it or not, shifted absolutely everything in my life. And it's why I started doing this work around turning privilege into change, because it was like, holy shit, I don't want this. I don't, but I can't do anything about it, right? It's the most comfortable I've felt in terms of moving through the world. So that's not going to change. And so what do we do? How do we address this? What do we change? And so trying to do some subtleties just to flag to our queer community, like, I'm one of you, it's okay, right? It's like with my nail polish and my earrings, and at the same time understanding that I get to play with gender now in a way I couldn't before, because I have the privileges of whiteness, because I have the privileges of maleness, right? So now I can challenge things in a different way because people think I have a penis. So it changes what I can do, what I couldn't do prior. I was thinking about this as you were talking. And then, think about why T-Door exists, right? This idea of, and who are we talking about on this day? Not very rarely are we talking about trans masculine people, right? It's really about the destruction of trans feminine folk, specifically trans feminine folk of color, and even more specifically Black trans women. The life expectancy is like 34 years old. We threw a party for one of my friends and I. We had a small little celebration when she made it to 35, and she almost didn't. And so, I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah.
I could keep going. I'll stop for a second.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we wanted to bring into the space is the blatant, at least to us, the blatant privilege that we have within this day.
Yeah.
Right? Because so often people are like, oh, why are you getting it? When we get into conversations with people that don't know much about trans folks, and they start feeling me get agitated or people get agitated, they're like, why are you getting, we're just having a conversation, like chill out, like you're being so aggressive. Like it's like, yeah, because you think that you don't have any skin in the game. I'm very aware of the skin that I have in this game. Right, and like I'm able to sit here and have all of my faculties pretty much intact, whereas I think a lot of like Black and brown trans girlfriends that I have would be really struggling at this moment to have this conversation, because it's heavy. Like this day is heavy, and yeah, I come into this space like we always have to talk about the trans struggle. And sometimes it seems like, oh, we only have one day to mourn all these fucking people. Like when, I don't know, it just like it's good to have a place for us to grieve, but at the same time it's really rough to go around carrying all the names of all your sisters, and what that does to our community, how that impacts us as a community as we go forward, and to have this day of just like inundating names and inundating stories,
Violent
is
stories too.
really violent.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not just like, I don't know, fucking
your
death is
average.
death, but this is
This is,
it's intense.
yeah.
Yeah, to like we want to talk about that, but at the same time, it's like, do I want to bring even more of that to for any trans person that might be here that, like that's dealing with that heaviness? Like, how do we navigate those spaces of being able to grieve, but also like not inundate, right? It's like I think a lot of people in the Black community can understand that. It's sad that there's like a rupture between a lot of the Black community not accepting Black trans people
Mhm.
as part of their community, but I do think that the Black community understands. Like, yeah, let's talk about fucking all the killings that are happening, but also don't show me every freaking video of this happening, because how is that allowing me to move through the world when the amount of sharing of joy is not equal. It's not even equal, like, but it should be up here,
Right.
right? Like, as we saw, I loved all those videos of like Black men frolicking. Like, that's we need a little balance in social media to be able to like feel like, oh, I can move through the world, right? Like, I don't need to be a bundle of grief for all these sisters without any joy, right? But
Well, the thing is that it's become this, right? I agree with you. I'm not a fan of this day. The reason this day started though it was an attempt to bring awareness to cis people about what was happening, right? This woman, Rita Hester, was murdered in '98, and a year later, her friends started this day to be like, "Yo, this is happening. This isn't." And what it's turned into is this sensationalizing of the only thing about trans people is that we're murdered, right? And it's like, and it gets put on us as that this is on us to carry, this is on us to fix. And it's like, yo, hold on a second, because we're not killing each other. We're not the ones doing this, right? So we have this entire day, this whole thing, International Day, to highlight the tragedy of what's happening to us, when actually, and Chris and I, you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this with other trans folk as well, is that being trans is far from a tragedy, right? The experience of being a trans individual, of moving through this world in a trans subjectivity, it's just so far from tragedy that this day just, I can feel myself getting a little like, a little raw about it. I get so frustrated about it because, aside from whoever's trans in this room, it's not on us to pay attention to this. It's like y'all are, not y'all, but y'all are killing us, right? And by us, I mean my friends who are trans women, because we were just talking about that privilege. Yeah,
yeah, it does seem like it turned into like, hey, this day where trans people get to mourn
yeah.
their people.
As if we're
And it
not
was,
mourning year round. Like,
yeah,
I mean, this
yeah.
is not a
Yeah.
weekly.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah,
sorry,
it's
go
supposed to
on.
be like this, like, hey, news, like this is happening, cis community, and
Mm.
it is important, and it is a lot of freaking trans people. So, but yeah, it's become more this day of like just for us, when really it was made by the friends of a trans person so that other communities can come and rally around this thing, like,
Mm.
and and we're asking through that day, what it's supposed to be, at least for me, is like asking the larger LGBTQ to put us at the forefront of, right, like the parade, which really started as a rally that's now like trying to be turned into like some music festival. It's like, no, we still have a lot of work to do. And then aside from just the LGBTQ community, like expanding towards other communities to help us out. And I think there was like the rally for Black trans lives in New York uh, like a while ago. I think it's called like it was like the NAACP, the silent protest for trans Black lives, and that was what I would hope for this day every day. And it referenced like a civil rights march that happened in New York in the what was it, 1917s or something like that. I don't know, it was just beautiful to see. It was not led by trans people, it was led by Black activists that are saying like, hey, like Black trans women matter. And it was this huge rally in New York City, and like that's what I would hope for this day, more than just us huddled in a corner reading off the names of, you know, the women that we lost, the sisters, the daughters, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, Kyle, I really like this idea of bringing in more joy, making our joy and like our existence. Yeah, it's a really cool existence. Like you get to really see like how a lot of other people move through the world. We've had so many experiences of treated like a woman and then treated like a man, and being like, do people really think there aren't these like super strict like narratives out there? Like the gender binary is violent towards everybody. Like it sucked being treated like a woman, and it sucked in other ways to be treated like a man. Right? Like it sucked to have that woman fucking cross the street or move away from you. Like I had people looking at me weird because I was in my car on the passenger seat with the window rolled down, waiting for my class to start. And I'm in the car next to little girls playing soccer in this other school.
Right.
And I had several men walking with their little daughters give me a really nasty look, and having the coaches kind of eyeing me because I was watching them play. Like, I don't know if
Right.
they were thinking anything bad, but it felt horrible to feel like, oh, maybe I should. And I did. I rolled up the window and I moved to the other chair, and I like, you know, just chilled there because I no longer felt comfortable looking at little kids playing, and that sucks, you know.
Yeah. I I hate that. It's I spend so much time now when I'm out in the world trying to be aware of my being and my body and where it's at, where things I would normally maybe do before that I wouldn't worry about. Now I have to think about presenting in the ways that I present. I just had a thought and I lost it. It's gone.
So I've got a question I think that emerges out of this line of discussion. Not to assume that transness is monolithic, right? But I think that there's some interesting things that come along with being trans for most people, and you've been articulating some of those, that it's a different way of moving through the world, and with its joys and with its challenges. And I'm wondering, just like politically, if you could, you know, what do you think transness has to teach the world politically that it's missing because it's stuck in these gender binaries and sex binaries and all of this other stuff? Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Get it, Kyle.
All right. I can get it. What do we have to teach politically besides? Well, there's this thing, spending time, as Chris was saying, being perceived and moving through the world as a woman, and then being perceived and moving through the world as a man. There's this interesting, it's sort of an in-between outside space that you get to exist and observe. The observance of how deeply committed cis people are to their gender performances. It's amazing to me, the amount of effort that goes into this, the amount of thought, and the amount of constriction that's in it. While at the same time, there's this conversation of expansion and unpacking and decolonizing gender, right? There's this contradiction, and I don't think it's unique to a gendered conversation, but since we're here, that's when we're going to talk about it. And the way in which I think trans people get to experience gender means we get to experience other things in these in-betweens outside ways. I think it would be nearly impossible to not. So if we're thinking about politically, then we're thinking about, I mean, what we know, right? Especially under capitalism, everything's a binary. It doesn't work otherwise. It just doesn't. And so if we apply the experience of being trans to these other ways of thinking, I mean, the possibilities become almost endless, if you're willing. But you have to be willing to challenge everything you've ever known. I mean, you have to be willing to imagine something you've never imagined. And I think that's one of the gifts of being trans, is just by default, we have to go through this process. We have to go through this process of imagining something that didn't exist otherwise, at least in our context, right? It does exist otherwise, but not in our context. And now, I mean, when I was coming up as trans, we didn't have a lot of options, right? Like non-binary wasn't really in our language. We were using gender non-conforming was around at the time. There was a whole lot of, I mean, we had lists upon lists of gender neutral pronouns. We couldn't quite figure out one, right? And there was ways in which you could be trans. There was a process to go through, and it very much aligned with becoming cis almost. And now, because of all these different ways of challenging things, all these, not just like Chris and I in our generation, but those before us that allowed us to do what we got to do. Now we have this generation coming up going, hold on, there's even more. There's even more we can do when we look at these things, and look at what happens when we combine this or take this and put it over here, or try a little piece of that and mix it with a little piece of this, and we got this whole new thing. And I think if folks could take a risk, it is a risk, because it can be a deeply disturbing process to challenge everything you've ever known about your being, to challenge your core truths about the world around you, to challenge the ways in which things are categorized, right? And categorizations help us move, help us feel safe. But you have to take all of that and say, no, thanks, I want to try something different, without really knowing what the something different is. And I think that's one of the things that's quite beautiful about being trans, is that we have some ideas, but every trans person is going to tell you a different story about how they went through their process. And those stories, I mean, it's really kind of amazing, the different ways in which people move and observe. And you know, when I was becoming Kyle, one of the greatest parts about it was that it wasn't just about like choosing a new name or having pronouns, but I spent a couple of years observing men mostly. But then I started to realize, oh, wait a minute, as I'm developing this new being, right? Because I didn't like who I was, so I wanted to become a whole different person. I realized I didn't have to stick with, oh, I'm going to become a dude, so I got to be a dude, right? And quite funny when people think you want to be a dude, and the shit they think is important to teach you. Like, it just cracks me up. And so I got to play with what it meant to be a dude. And by playing with what meant to be a dude, it affected the cis dudes in my life and the way in which they were with each other. And I got to observe this, right? So I come in and I start complimenting all the cis dudes on their cute shirt, or like, oh, you're looking fresh today, or whatever the hell, right? And that's not how dudes are. Let me just tell you, at least not 15 years ago, this is not something you do. But I did, because fuck it, right? Because I can be what I want to be. And that was so fucking cool to me. Just thought, wow, I get to choose. And okay, well, I want to choose these things. And then I got to watch my cis male friends start to compliment each other, start to hug each other, start to change the way in which they held their bodies or their clothing, right? And I just thought, wow, just if can we have more of this? Because I think if we could have more of this, we could see a really big difference, right? And so this is what I think politically what trans people could give us is probably more existential than, that's what I got. Chris, what do you got?
I love and second all of that. Like, I'm sitting here thinking about, like, right, I think it was in David's class, and one of those classes we learned about a scientist that like discovered something new about some, like, I don't know, microbe, like in the ocean somewhere or something like that, that like everybody was like, every scientist was like, oh, it's this or that, it's this or that, and it's very like binary, but because they wanted to, we have these biases that without us knowing goes into everything. So when we're looking at something, we're like, oh, clearly it's this or that because that's the way we've been trained. And this trans scientist came in and she was like, wait, what the like, hold on a minute, like there's billions or like millions of these things happening with this microbe, like and how did you guys miss that? So like that example exponentially throughout life, right? Like how are we moving politically around the world when we're so conditioned to look at things in a binary way? You're either my friend or you're my foe. And how could that change everything? And in the smaller ways of like just interacting with each other, like to really take a minute to sit with what would it be like if I experienced every person for who they are. So I am trying to strip away as much as I think I know about somebody when I meet them. Mm-hmm. Because if you pay attention, you'll realize you have a billion things that come into your brain right before you shake somebody's hand or hug somebody or say hello to somebody for the first time. And just like the immense expansion of possibility for that friendship and that relation, when you try to drop those and you really are like, I have no idea anything about you. I don't know who you love. I don't know how you move in the world. I don't know what your body has gone through. Like, and I think that in and of itself is a beautiful thing. Like you were talking about with a bunch of guys that like have all these things on them of like what they're either capable of or not capable of, what they're able to handle with conversations, like what kind of conversations would you have with the guys around you if you didn't know anything about guy? What kind of conversations would men be having with women if they didn't have any prior knowledge about what woman is? Like what kind of friendships would be bonded in that? What would you know about the people in your life if you didn't just like fill in all these boxes? And like what kind of man would you become? What kind of person would you become? Like I just recently had this experience with this little kid. I was playing with my niece and all her little friends playing tag, and this kid like sees me as like, they think I'm 18, which is great because I move fast, but some of them think I'm slow. So I probably am 18, somewhere 20, maybe because you're a little slow. So you're probably getting into your 20s. Anyway, but this kid is really like, he thinks I'm a cool guy. I move fast. He thinks I move fast. So he tags along and he's like, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna tell you where people are, you know. And he starts telling me about this fight that he got into with one of the girls. And he's like telling me how he like kind of told her off, but he's like, but I would never, like, I never touch them. I have this rule that I don't touch a girl with even the petal of a rose. Like literally, like, you know, this very old school saying, right? You don't put your hand on a girl. And I was like, well, I'm really glad that you have that. I hope that you have that for your boyfriends too, you know, for your friends who are boys as well. Like, I hope, you know, that like nobody is hitting you, like, because like that hurts boys too. Like, boys get hurt too, you know, and like it kind of like he didn't quite know what to do with that serious conversation, right? He just thought he was being cool and sharing something about him being like this cool guy. But I hope that that resonated with him and let him feel like I do hurt too. I don't want to be hit either, you know? And in these little ways that seem like, you know, yeah, like I think some cis people can come up with some stuff, but I think that there's a lot that comes from living in different experiences and being perceived by the world in completely different ways, that we can come up, trans people can come up with things that are really meant to heal relationships between humanity. Because I don't think we're aware of how much we police ourselves, how much women police themselves, how much men police themselves. You know, and how dangerous that is. We chuck it up as like, oh, it's all right. I wanted to wear a skirt, but it's not a big deal. Like, that's gay anyway. Like, but what did not wearing a skirt for that little boy actually rip away from him?
Right.
You know, I don't know, little things like that, but they're big things.
I'm loving this conversation, and I want it to just roll on, and I hope you all are seeing all the love that you're getting along the way. But I want to check in with Sarah Beth and see if there are any questions in the chat that we need to bring into the room too.
I'm looking in the chat.
Oh,
Sorry.
Rosa, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we don't have questions, but we have a comments about acknowledgement. For example, Jen Kopenik, you brought up in the context of Kyle talking about this encounter with the idea of what do I do with this privilege that I now have because of my choices, how this plays out. And at that moment, Jen, you made a comment. Can you reconstruct your reaction? Jen?
Yeah, what really stood out to me was when the woman or female presenting walked far away from you. And I thought about if I were in that situation where with other women, I always want them to feel safe. And for me to, if I were in your shoes, I think that would be really difficult. So being able to see that other side or that different perspective was just kind of eye-opening for me. And in a way, I just wish we could all be in different people's shoes to go, oh, that's how that group of people are treated. Or, oh, those are the fears or joys or whatever. So that was just, that really stood out to me. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Jen. And the other comment you made, Jen, was in the context of Cristina talking about the biases and the preconceptions. I wonder if you want to also comment on that.
Yeah, when I sent that next one, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna wait. Yeah, I think about myself, and when I see someone, I immediately make so many assumptions. And I think it was just agreeing with Chris about just how much we put people in boxes before even giving them a chance. And I feel the same with my as a former teacher with elementary school students, same thing where they're trying to fit into a box or just, you know, everyone wants to be connected and feel like they're in the group or part of the group. And it's just, I think we can become more divisive without even meaning to.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think another thing that we can learn as humans looking into the past that had more expansive ways of identifying themselves is how do we create identity of self without using these very like, I don't know, these things that aren't that that are supposed to be more fun to play with, right? Like indigenous people like really identified with like, what can I do for my community? That is where my identity lies. Or this land that I was born in, like I relate to it, and that is what my identity is tied to. So more expansive ways of identifying like what makes me me besides these things that I was born with. You know, like my partner's friend, really close friend, he's like, you know, people compliment me on my beautiful eyes. He's like, I have nothing to do with them. Like, you know, I was born with them, you know. And it's like, why can't we just have, you know, clothes and what we're born with be this thing that we get to play with, but then actually hold identity as something more integral, such as what can I do for my community? Like, am I a basket weaver? Am I, you know, a person that knows how to create bows? Am I somebody that knows how to communicate really well, and therefore I can bring peace between groups? So I'm a peacemaker. Like things like that that are way more central to who we are, to who our spirit is, as opposed to these random things that like kind of just supposed to be there for fun. Like, you know, like I don't know, we could have so much more fun with clothing and with our bodies. But
But Chris, then how will we control everybody? Can you tell me? Because I think this is why we have resistance to this change, no? Is because binaries allow control. Capitalism allows control. White supremacy needs control. And so if we fight all this, and if anybody needs another reason to fight the binary of gender, you know, put it under fighting the patriarchy, put it under fighting racism, put it under fighting ableism, put it under, it's all connected, right? And these are all means of control. These didn't exist until the colonizers went in and destroyed all the indigenous communities and ways of being around gender intentionally, right? There's a whole history about this. So if we want to challenge, you know, AULA, white supremacy, and
yeah,
everything, you know,
yeah,
you can think about it in these ways: is how do we, these institutions of being, right? Institutions of gender, institutions of race, they all tell us how to be. And the reason they tell us how to be is so that certain groups can remain in power and in control. And the only ways those groups remain in power and control is if others are pushed down, right? We know this. And so, right, exactly. And so
yeah,
I'm all with you and down with the binary.
it's a false sense of security that these systems want to create. Like, hey, they're these things that are really scary out in the world, and here we are to save you from them, and they create a false sense of security, and we cling to them because we are scared for some reason.
Well, not for some reason. I mean, we live in a system that perpetuates fear and violence, right? Especially in the States. This is the whole MO of the States, is keeping us complacent, is one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. If we fight you here, then you can't do this. If you're exhausted from working to try to buy food, well, then you can't fight us here, right? And during COVID, oh, too many people are going out to the streets for Black lives, so we got to get them back to work, right? It's our system to keep us in this way, and these are just elements of that system. So it's
we have
changed the way. Sorry.
So no, sorry, Kyle. No. I was just wanted to acknowledge that in about 5 minutes, some people are gonna be leaving us. Just acknowledge them. Thank them for being here and to be able to continue with the conversation with you, because there are some questions here from Clarence, for example. Clarence, would you want to raise your question, please?
Well, I was just curious. Why don't we let Phoenix ask her question first, because she has to leave.
Oh, Phoenix. Okay, Phoenix, please.
Hi, I'm not a she, her, and I don't have a question. I was just responding.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Phoenix. Charlie or Clarence? Clarence.
My question was simple. I was just curious about the life expectancy that you raised earlier. I think it was Chris who did so. 34. Is that because of the medical treatment, the hormones, and or the lifestyle? What's attributed to the 34-year-old expectancy date?
What Phoenix responded with murder and suicide.
Mhm.
It's not medication, it's not hormones, it's not being trans, it's murder and suicide. Because being trans in this world is really difficult when you go outside your house, especially for trans women. And so that's why suicide, because at least I remember living in those days when that was me. It's really exhausting to feel hated, and the looks you receive, people ignore you, can't get help. Like, it's just so much. And many trans people are alone. They lose their families, they lose their friends. So suicide, and then murder because of everything we've been discussing about, well, mostly it's the patriarchy, right? Because trans women directly challenge the patriarchy. And so this is why, partly why this is happening. Yeah, that's what I would say. Chris, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, when we think of suicide, right, it's being pushed. You're being pushed into, ending this, because it's not that you want to end yourself, is that you want to end the pain that is coming from outside of you, right? And like Kyle and I were talking a few days ago, and you brought up something that was really cool. That it's like, like there's so many beautiful things about being trans, about experiencing yourself outside the gender binary is such a beautiful thing. And the things that actually make it hard, and that make it painful, and that make it this really intense thing are all coming from outside. We keep having these conversations that like marginalize our bodies and our lives, and it's all coming from outside of us. Like and that's really really annoying. We're just commenting on things that are like, we just are like, and you keep commenting on this thing and then making it seem like it's something that doesn't exist. It's a weird thing.
There was a comment from Charlie Lang. He had to leave earlier. A comment about a trans student comment once that I think the best therapists for cis couples are trans therapists, because they had real life experiences of being on both sides of the gender equation. Going back to this, I guess, comment of what you bring to the world, right? To bring the politics. This is the politics of therapy.
Sure. Sorry.
No, please.
I was just gonna say that trans people are probably gonna be amazing at most things if we had the opportunity.
Yeah, it's really cool. See, we get to play around with these things and see what comes up from them, but I think in so many different ways, like we can look at all different parts of our society, and we can queer people and queer theory and queer activism has some way of helping. I think there's a lot that we can do for like the medical establishment and like all these different things that get missed by doctors, because they're saying like, oh, here's a straight man, I'm not going to ask him about da 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 da, or here's a straight cis woman, I'm not going to ask her about like who she, whatever. Like there's different ways that we can do things in the medical establishment that could really give us information that doctors are missing, because they're making assumptions, because they're people just like us. They make assumptions with who's walking in the room, like, oh, actually that straight man is having sex with this cis straight woman in a very interesting way, that he could help them out in different ways if he asked those questions, but he's not asking them because he's assuming that their sex life looks a certain way, right? Just to give like a small example on some other thing, just to throw random shit out there.
I want to step in, thank Rosa for monitoring the chat and bringing those questions in. It's 5 o'clock. We formally close at 5, but we don't close at 5. So if you can hang out for another 15, 20 minutes, the conversation will continue in a more informal way. It's often my favorite part of messy conversations, so I hope you can do that. Chris and Kyle both said that they could do that. And I just want to acknowledge the misgendering of Phoenix earlier, and appreciate your voice in the conversation very much. So this is our last conversation, messy conversation for fall. Look for flyers that will give you the schedule starting the second week of winter quarter. I don't have the date in my head right now, but week 2 will get started again for winter. And just while we're all together collectively to acknowledge the fantastic conversation and work of both Chris and Kyle. Thank you so much. And I'm not sure where else you folks wanted to go in the conversation, but I would love to hear. I've been thinking about this in 2 different ways. One, just hear some of your thoughts about trans joy. You know, I think so much about, in a different context, of the work of someone like Cornel West, for instance, who is and Audre Lorde as and Bell Hooks, all of whom in the context of race consistently say enough already. Like, yeah, there is joy here. There is resilience here. There is beauty here. And so that would be one way to go. The other's a little more personal and intimate. Just, you know, if you wanted to take a minute in this space to thank trans people who have brought you joy.
Thinking of people.
I can talk about somebody. Jasmine Creighton. I think I'm saying her last name right. Jasmine has been all over the WeHo, every club you can possibly imagine, as an entertainer, as a dancer, as a singer, as an activist. She's just this beautiful energy. She's an actress too. She's been in like random ass movies. One of them is the 40-year-old version. And I don't know, she's just brought me so much joy. When I was having trouble at church, this church that I grew up at, 2 people in that church were really not sure what to do with my transition. Because of that, I started alienating myself from the church, even though I had a lot of beautiful people there telling me, like, don't listen to them, like, please stay, we love you. But I had a hard time, so I just kind of backed off of it, and I was really trying to understand myself in a different way that didn't include my body, because it was bringing so much pain. And through calling a radio station that was a Christian radio station, and they were saying, like, if you're having problems in your church, call us with anything you got. We can do it. Let's go for it. Let's talk about it. And I'm like, I'll give you something. And I had just been in my car crying for like hours. And I was listening to Christian music, trying to make myself feel better. And he said that. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to freaking call, see how they do. And before I could really say anything, like, my voice started cracking. I could listen to myself in the radio talking to him. And I was like, this is what's going on. I'm trans. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And he said, you know, like, we love you, brother. We hear you. We're praying that your congregation knows how to move through this in a beautiful way. And he's like, we want you to see yourself the way that God sees you, which is first and foremost as a spirit. So can you, for me, see yourself as a spirit? And you are wonderfully made. And from that day forward, I started navigating towards things that identified myself as a spirit. It's like, wow, this thing that doesn't have any kind of commenting on it. Nobody's commenting on my spirit. I'm not commenting on my spirit. I'm not policing it, you know? And I went to a trans training, like a trans sensitivity training in WeHo for the police, and Jasmine was the one that put it together. And she talked about spirit the whole time we were there. And then I just like gravitated towards her, and she just kind of took me under her wing, like brought me to like Tool Time, which was this like trans support group. She like put me in one of her plays where I didn't get to choose like what I was a part of, like what scene I was a part of. I ended up getting a monologue of a pastor talking to younger generations.
Hmm.
And it was such a healing experience. I don't know, I love her in the way that she like guided me through all that. And we got to be in like a car in the parade and shit, and have good trans fucking joy. And she has music out there on Spotify if you want to look her up, Jasmine Creighton. She's just fucking great, and she really let me experience myself as a spirit. And yeah, just freaking having fun and dancing and singing.
Chris, that's brilliant.
Happy tears.
They're beautiful. They look good on you. I guess it's my turn. I'm trying to think of somebody to tell a story about. Those that know me know that I don't have a history of having like people in my life. Um, and when I was yeah, I didn't, Jesus, find a sentence, Kyle. There's this way of being when you don't have people. There's a lot of things that you have to be very careful. Can't take a lot of risks, because if you fall, you're the only one there to catch you. And so there's a lot of things that you just got to be careful about doing. And transitioning was like one of those things, I think, that felt super, was it impossible, overwhelming? Like, how do I do this on my own? And at the very beginning of it all, I met this trans guy, Ian Harvey. He's actually a comedian. He was like, I think 20 years older than me, and also at the beginning of his own process as well. And I was completely infatuated with this person. I was like, oh my God, you're just so cool. You stand on a stage and you tell funny jokes, and your name's Ian, and you're cool. And like, I was just like, please be my friend. I want to be, please be my friend. And I'm super awkward. I don't know how to make friends, so I have no idea how it happened. But he decided I was worth a friendship and care and love. And he made this really scary thing. You know, I was already so alone, and the idea of putting myself into a position of facing so much more. And at the time, right, we didn't have all the literature we have. We didn't have all the fiction books. We didn't have, none of this existed. There was Stone Butch Blues and Jerry Springer. So all I knew about being trans was violence and hate. I know, this was my understanding of things. And I was like, I've had enough of that in my life. I don't really want more of it. And Ian, he just like, he opened up this possibility of it can actually be fun. Like, it doesn't have to be so scary. And he really helped. Like, I mean, it was this experience of just like having somebody to talk to, and like just having questions about things, you know, and not knowing how to ask those questions, and being seen in some way. And for me, being seen just wasn't, I mean, at that point in my life, I was pretty used to being invisible. And so having this person be there, in I mean just like, he like took me under as if like I was his little brother. It was really kind of amazing. And we'd meet weekly for our little diner lunch or whatever. And you know, we'd talk about things. I'd share riding with him. You know, he took me, I had my first ever 2000, whatever it was. I don't even know what year it was, 2012 maybe. Took me to Maine for this comedy festival he was putting on. And it was the first time I'd ever gone somewhere and had a nice time. Like every time, like every trip prior to that I had been on had been pretty awful. And so and I'm pretty sure this being saved my life during those years, just by giving a shit. And you know, like, we can laugh about the things that are hard about being trans without minimizing the things that are hard about being trans. And I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know we could be happy too. And he gave me that possibility, and he gave me the possibility of being loved in the future as well, because I mean, he really gave a shit about me. He really, and I just hadn't really experienced that. He's not in my life anymore, not for any bad reasons, just as things go sometimes, you know. But I hadn't thought about him in a long while. Yeah, I think he's one of the reasons I'm still here, and I think he's one of the reasons I can be as I am today in my transness. Yeah, thanks, David. That's really feels wonderful to think about him again, and to remember how life-saving that relationship really was. Yeah, I hadn't quite connected that being almost a beginning to be able to be loved in the future. I hadn't seen that connection till now, and that's really kind of, wow, that's really deeply special. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yes, so Neil, would you like to share what you share in the chat about your NB friend? Well, it's in the chat, guys, if you want to read wonderful thoughts that are flowing in the chat.
I'm going to chime in to say I'm obviously so grateful to be here and to learn and hear from both of you. And I am sad that this Messy Conversations fell on this Thanksgiving week, because I'm thinking of some colleagues who may have been here otherwise. And I'm like, want to bring everybody all the time. So I'm just grateful for everyone else who did show up as well. I'm taking away a lot from today. So thank you.
Well, Jen, I want to thank you for that comment, and it gives me an opportunity to remind everybody that we record these and they're posted on YouTube. Most of them. There's some that are internal Antioch business. We don't do that, but you can just subscribe to Messy Conversations, and you'll get them that way. And we encourage you to pass them around to friends. I think a lot of important things happen in these spaces, sometimes more important than others. But this, I think, has been remarkable. Just the vulnerability and intimacy of Kyle and Chris to come into the space and be with us in this way. So I don't know if Neil heard you earlier, Rosa, so I'm just going to repeat. Neil, are you here? And do you want to comment on your...
Neil is not
Yeah,
in a situation where he can talk.
I see. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
They wrote about their dear friend who chose the virtue named Joy. They were talking about how they devoted so much of themselves to their community's safety and protection, and are lovingly known as Trans Joy to so many. And that's really beautiful. Trans Joy.
And Rose shared the resource that you were talking about, Cristina.
Yeah. Thanks, Neil, for that. And yeah, thanks, babe, my partner. That's the Instagram name that Jasmine is under, if you want to follow her.
You all both also did a great job of talking about the intersection of trans and race, and how that makes things more complex. And I'm curious. I don't know how much time you have for the conversation, but I'm curious how that intersection has played out in your lives and your experience as trans folks.
You want to go first, Kyle, or?
And I'm not. All right. I think for me, it's created a deep sense of responsibility, because while I exist in a trans body, when I move through the world, unless I come out, I'm perceived as cis and I'm perceived as white, and so it's an often interesting place to navigate, to be aware of the access that gives me, but also to hold on to the honesty of who I am and the honesty of my history and of my experience, and being quite cautious of holding my awareness of when I'm trading on these privileges or not, and doing my absolute best to not trade on them, and still messing up sometimes, which then it can be a frustrating experience. And at the same time, it's like, it's a privilege, so it's frustrating, and not a lot of harm comes from having privileges. So for me, what it creates and has created is a deep sense of responsibility to maintain an awareness of how I move. But then also there's certain situations where I have to be careful, because if I say too much and I come out, then I'm in quite a lot of danger, and needing to weigh and know eventually I'll learn how to like be a master fighter person, protect myself. Rar, maybe. Or, you know, I'll just find stronger friends. Um, but mostly it's I move with the holding the awareness that I carry these privileges now of whiteness and maleness, whether it's either or true, doesn't really matter. My skin's light enough that that's what it brings for me. And so that tends to be when I'm out in the world at the forefront of things. But then when I'm with my people, I can just be Kyle the queer, which is fun. So yeah.
Hey, Rose, you want in? Just jump in.
I didn't totally mean to, but I was like messing around. But I do have a question. I think it's really interesting to go from, you were like, yeah, I was read as Latina, which I am not, and then read as white, which I am not. So it's I don't know, it seems like an interesting movement. And I can see the privilege in it, but also there's something about like this interesting thing of being able to, well, I guess I wonder, like, do you get to claim it when you want to and then let go of it when you don't? But then what happens with the whole thing of like, no one's reading me right, like anywhere. I'm not getting read right. Like, does that fuck with you?
I mean, sometimes, yeah, sure. And I think it would fuck with me more if I was still as alone as I used to be. But again, in the world that we live in, yeah, people are literally murdered, killed, and destroyed for how they are perceived. And so when I am out in the world or when I am doing my work, this is in what I hold more in the front, because the perception of me today does not invite a lot of violence. It does not invite a lot of risk. And there's this other space. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's confusing. It makes it, you know, you have questions within your own being of, well, where am I? Where do I land? Am I actually white? I don't think I'm actually white. But what about all of these experiences? Yeah, but that's for conversations with my intimates, right? That's for conversations with those who share the same level of privileges as I do, right? That's not for conversations in this setting. That's not for when I'm doing my work. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, this is more important. We live in a time where violence is happening to so many, and I receive access because of the violence that so many receive or face. And so that's more important to me than feeling some type of way about not being perceived proper. It's the cushions of privilege. It's the cushions of whiteness, right? I tend to get kind of upset with folks who don't hold that perspective. Yeah, so I love that question.
Lisa, I see you want in on the conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations you have to have walking through life. You know, what you have to be careful of, what you have to look out for, and that must be wearing, you know, and heavy. When or where are those times when you don't have to constantly be aware, and where you could just sit with yourself in community? Are they often? When do they happen? And what is that? What are those opportunities that present themselves where you can just be, where you can just feel the existence of your beauty and your being and your grace and intelligence? Where do those opportunities come in?
They're not often. But for me, there's a small, very small handful of creatures who deeply love me and deeply see me. And it's when I'm with them that all that other stuff can get set down. It's when I feel safe and cared for. When being trans isn't the most important thing, or even the reason they're my friends, or anywhere. It's really an amazing experience to have beings and creatures who love you in such a way. The things one can do in life, the risks one can take, and having an experience of a sense of safety is was a long-term dream of mine. And so these folks, they make it possible for me to be able to keep doing the things I'm doing, to do the work that I'm doing, to spend most of my time in a state of keep an eye out. Yeah, so that's, for me, that's when I get to set that down, is because I have folks who probably would cause a lot of harm if someone hurt me now, and that feels amazing, because then they'll hug me and hold me, and I really can't stress enough how much of a difference it makes. So yeah, thank you for that question, Lisa.
Chris, do you want to weigh in on that? Or?
Yeah. I think for me, there's different levels of that experience. I think it's hard to completely forget or put down everything that has been done to people that I would consider community. So it's hard to put that down mentally. So in that sense, there's not very many times where you get to just be where you just get to be. I think that probably if we all think about that, anybody here thinks about that, where do I really get to be? I think we can all feel a little bit of that. There was this experience of I was given the chance to go to the Trans Health conference in Philadelphia. And walking into this huge space where most, if not all, the people in there were trans or gender non-binary, just fucking trans, you know. And that was a wild experience. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know that I was gonna feel any type of way around that, but I did, and that was eye-opening. It kind of let me realize how much not having that was actually weighing on me. I didn't realize that I was craving being seen in that way. You know, there's something about like walking around here in the United States and having been born in Colombia, and when I go back and how it feels like to be around shorter people. And people that talk like me, and men that look a little bit more like younger, I guess, as opposed to like a lot of men that look like just, you know, this like aged, I don't know, like I don't know, it's just different. So in that same kind of vein, I think when we go to a place where you don't have to explain certain things, I didn't realize how big of an impact that made for my transness, and to be in a space where I'm like, wow, like there's a lot of people out there like me. I think I didn't realize how I couldn't picture my future. And I think it was going through to that conference where I think it started to kind of solidify, like, oh, you have future. And I think it's because I somewhere subconsciously I thought I didn't belong here because they didn't seem to be a script for me, and I was looking for a script. And when I saw that there was a shit ton of people, I was like, oh, clearly I'm here. Like, I guess I exist. And it's funny how that it took that for that to happen. So that was one experience. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of joy that I have in my life. But I think there's always this like background, if not at the forefront, sadness for how violent humans are towards everything, including themselves. And I have that with the trans perspective, but I'm sure all of us have that to a certain degree with something. Hopefully I think that answered the question.
Yeah, Rose, we'll give you the last word here.
This just popped this one thing up in my brain that I just wanted to share, that there's this clip going around right now of Meryl Streep talking about in the world that she, you know, came up in, that she says, I speak men. I dream in men. I know how the male language works, right? That's the world that we're born in. Like, we all speak male, but men don't know how to speak women, right? Like, they just don't know how to do that. And so I think about, and being in partnership with somebody who's, I'm like, I think there's something really magical about this. Like, I feel like y'all get to speak both languages, right? Like, you know what this one thing is, and you know this other thing so deeply. And the transcendence and the magic and the access in that just feels really, but I don't know, because I'm not fucking trans, I'm cis, I don't know, but there's like something about this thing that I like perceive to be maybe true, or maybe there, of this like this having two different languages you have access to so deeply, and how magical that seems to me.
Except I still don't speak men. Cis straight men are confusing. I don't understand them. And I don't think they
Gosh,
understand
David.
me. Not David. Try to talk about feelings and stuff. I don't know how to, I try to flirt with gay men too, and I don't know how to do it. It's really sad, because I'm queer as fuck, right? But there's a way in which gay men do things, and I don't understand it, and I don't know how, and I try, and sometimes they're just more aggressive than I can deal with. I'm like, no, gentle romance, and they're like, no, let's just fuck, and I'm like, okay, and I don't know how to do it, but they sometimes think I do. So it is beautiful and magical, and yet cis straight men are confusing.
Yeah.
So that's what I
Um,
thought.
That seems like a perfect note to begin to wrap things up on. Because we've impinged on your generosity, and super grateful, as I said earlier, that you agreed to join us, and have these conversations with us. And I think that they will help us in other conversations that we continue to try to have here in the messy conversation space. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm deeply touched at just how generous and vulnerable and intimate you were willing to be in this space. And I know I'm not alone in that. So thank you both. A round of applause for our conversationalists.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
yeah, there's a lot of love here.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you,
was
Chris.
wicked
Thank you,
fun.
Kyle. And thank you, David.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you, David. You brought me to tears.
You guys are beautiful.
And we'll see everybody early January.
Thanks, y'all.
Enjoy your holidays.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.